Hey everyone, this is Matt from Cold War. I'll be going through a couple of starting turns in multiplayer here and briefly talk about the differences from solo play. If you haven't watched the solo gameplay, you can check it out on YouTube or the Kickstarter campaign page. Before we jump into it here, I want to note the affix. Affixes must be used in multiplayer. They scale the difficulty and make multiplayer different. This affix can get deadly. The first part, making abominations and beasts mutants in addition to their other types, doesn't sound like a big deal, but if a player takes 5 or more damage from mutants in a turn, you put an essence counter on the affix. Then, at the beginning of each turn, each player loses essence equal to the counters on contagion. Now, I've already set up this campaign, but I'll run down how to do it. First, pick the campaign you'll be playing and place it and any of the affixes that it has onto the game board. Then grab all the encounter cards for the encounter deck, shuffle them up, and place it in the encounter deck slot of the game board. Then each player chooses an avatar to play as and decides the turn order. For this, I've got Hellrider and Lady Death, with Lady Death going first. Next, check the campaign for how many abilities each player can have. Undying Horde allows 2 abilities per player. For Lady Death, the abilities I chose are Divine Plague and Shadow Slip. Divine Plague lets her target a minion, and then all the minions in play with the same name lose essence equal to how many with that name are in play. Shadow Slip lets her push an encounter back to the next available empty position. Hellrider is bringing along a little support for the duo with Celestial Sight and Cleanse. Celestial Sight lets him look ahead in the encounter deck so we can prepare for what's coming, while Cleanse gives him the utility to cure or prevent a condition from happening. Getting back to the setup, after selecting abilities, we give our avatars their starting essence. Lady Death has 6 and Hellrider has 5. And we move on to picking shard abilities. For Lady Death, I picked a location that lets her receive 1 less damage during counterattacks, which can also be removed to gain essence equal to her base essence, being 6. For Hellrider, I chose a location that lets me use the shard to remove any number of conditions from any players, again taking some utility. Whew, now that I'm out of breath, let's get on to turn 1. Instead of drawing 1 encounter at the beginning, we draw 1 encounter for each player. So let's draw the first one and slide it down to spot 2, then draw our second encounter. Then we mark the encounter essence and move on to the ability phase. In the ability phase, players do actions simultaneously. We'll use some abilities in the advanced interaction coming up. Now, onto the attack phase. We have a Guardian in play and need to take care of that first, before we can deal damage to any non-Guardians. After my roll, I've got a few that are high enough to be used as damage. Hellrider has 3 that beat the Hive Warden's resistances, while I whiffed on Lady Death, only managing 2 that beat its resistances. Just as a quick reminder, the type of die you roll needs to meet or beat that same type of resistance on an encounter to deal damage. The Hive Warden's resistances are 3 in Fire, 3 in Shadow, and 4 with Ethereal. There's an important factor I want to point out here. Damage dealt is what transfers essence, so players will have to decide who is dealing how much damage in the event more damage can be dealt over how much essence the encounters have. I'll assign the damage here, and this leads us into the next change from solo play in the counterattack phase. So during the counterattack phase, all players will be hit by encounters still in play. Hellrider, for example, will take 1 damage from the Hive Warden and 2 damage from the Squealer. However, Lady Death took the Spirit Shard ability that reduces the damage she takes during counterattack. She'll take 1 damage from the Hive Warden and only 1 damage from the Squealer. This ends the turn with Hellrider at 5 essence and Lady Death at 6. Moving on to 2. In future draw encounter phases, if there are fewer encounters in play than players, you draw encounters to meet the player count. Otherwise, you only draw 1. Since we already have 2 encounters in play, we'll only be drawing 1 encounter this turn. Alright, so let's bump the Hive Warden and the Squealer down 1 position and draw our encounter for the turn. Then we would play through it as normal. Now, let's take a look after a few turns. Okay, the state of the game is this. I'm at 3 out of 4 invader points. I've got 3 counters on Contagion, and last turn I had to use Hellrider's Spirit Shard ability to remove the daze from Lady Death, for her to Shadow Slip the Squealer so I could try and take care of a Hive Warden and a different Screeze. A couple of turns before that, I used Celestial Sight to help me plan better and survive to this point down to the last encounter draw. Before we draw the last encounter and move everything down, Contagion is going to cause Hellrider and Lady Death to lose 3 essence each. Now we can draw the last encounter and what do you know, it's a Hellbear. Conditions will apply to the first player by default, and I can't afford her to be dazed this turn. Since I've already used Hellrider's Spirit Shard ability, I have to play Cleanse this turn, so I'll pay the 3 essence and use Cleanse to prevent the daze. Now, we'll move into the ability phase of the turn. I need to play Shadow Slip and Divine Plague this turn, but I don't have enough essence to pay for them. This is the perfect time for me to use Lady Death's Spirit Shard ability to gain back some essence. Her base is 6, so now she'll be at 7. At this point, I'm really going for broke. First, I'll use Shadow Slip on the Squealer. Just in case I don't deal enough damage this turn, I want to make sure that I don't lose to it becoming an invader. Next, I'm going to play Divine Plague targeting the Hellbear. Since there are 3 Hellbears in play, all 3 of them will lose 3 essence each. Now that I've exhausted my options and eliminated some Hellies, I'll make my attack roll. Looks like I've got a good one this time, and checking my rolls against the resistances here, I will be able to deal 2 damage to each of them. Looks like I got some redemption this time by winning in the multiplayer snippet here. Once again, this is Matt with Cold War. Thank you for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.